Let's say this red ball represents our shooter. Let's say the cue ball here represents the bullet from his gun. The myth is that our shooter can fire a bullet and can bounce off 1, 2, 3 surfaces and come back and kill the shooter.
Well, that'd ruin your day.
I know. Let's test it.
Okay.
The myth takes place in a half-built skyscraper. It's a pin-up parable for poetic justice. One angry shot at just the wrong angle misses the target, ricochets off 3 steel beams, and returns to the shooter in less than a heartbeat.
So how do you want to start this one?
Well, I figure we need to start with some kind of a controlled situation. You know, a bench test.
Well, to my mind, that just means we set up 3 adjustable steel plates, probably in our bunker, fire a gun into them, and see if it ricochets off all 3 plates and kills its shooter.
Works for me.
All right. You ready to let all hell break loose in here?
Yep.
From bare bunker to ballistic death trap, the transformation is fast and efficient. Jamie first strips down, then mounts the weapon of choice, a .45 caliber pistol, while Adam takes charge of the Vice Squad.
Nice. That's not going anywhere.
Nor is this test, unless they get everything right in the setup. If the placement of plates and the gun isn't perfect, they'll be here all day.
3 steel plates and 3 vices and 1 .45 caliber pistol, and what we've got here is pretty much the bench test setting up the circumstances of this myth, in which this pistol will release its bullet, firing it into plate number 1, where it will reflect off, in theory at least, at a 90-degree angle into plate number 2, doing the same to plate number 3, and hopefully coming all the way back around to where it started, potentially killing its shooter. Now, to make sure that everything's set up nice and jake, I'm going to use some mirrors and a laser.
With the help of predictive technology, they're doing Pythagoras proud. The final angle won't quite make a perfect diamond, but there's method behind this deliberate misdeflection.
Yeah, it brings the path of the bullet back here so that we hopefully don't hit the gun.
Okay.
I don't want to hurt it.
Adam has no such concerns about punching a hole in his partner in crime.
I brought some motivation for our gun. I brought a shooter.
That looked badass.
Yeah. I figured we put him right here, and if there's any meat on the bones of this, he's going to end up with a bullet hole in him.
Okay.
So what we've got set up inside the bunker right now is a really idealized situation. In actuality, I'm not so sure it's going to make it perfectly all the way through. I don't know. I've seen a lot about bullets when they hit metal objects, and I'm expecting some spatter.
And they both seem to think that the spatter will matter.
Bullets aren't lasers, and in fact, the bullet we're using is going to be made out of lead. These plates are made out of steel, and if you put lead against steel, steel wins. In other words, that bullet's going to deform seriously when it hits a steel plate.
Adam puts paper to steel to help mark the points of impact. When he's done, Jamie carefully loads the weapon.
Bunker's hot.
And they're ready to shoot with intent to kill Dirty Jamie.
This is ricocheting bullet. Ideal scenario. And 3, 2, 1. I only see 1 plate with a mark on it. Second plate doesn't have anything.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
On closer inspection, that turns out to be an understatement.
I can already see what's going on here. Look at the back wall.
Yeah, all right along here. It's spread out almost 4 feet. So much for, like, ding, 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 it just went shotgun.
It looks like the lead bullet shattered, and the high-speed replay confirms their consternation.
Well, that didn't work.
And there's your problem. That bullet came in and it just kind of laid flat right along the plate.
It did. It was so beautiful. It followed the line just perfectly. The fire behind it is gorgeous, and then...
Yeah, there's got to be a bullet that holds together better than that.
Yeah, I think so.
Time to dip into Jamie's private stash.
What do you got there? A story about very small things?
Yep. We're talking about millions of tiny organisms that you come into contact with every day, but some of them could have a nasty surprise waiting for you and be really harmful.
I got one that fits that bill. I got a chain letter recently that stated a woman had died from a deadly pathogen she contracted drinking from a soda can tainted with rat urine.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, let's get to it.
Okay.
Wherever there are rats, filth follows. But are soda cans really contaminated by rat pee? And if they are, could drinking directly from the can be deadly?
So how do you want to test this?
Well, you know, this myth is so pervasive, we need to get it right. And that means we need to have a nice, large sample size.
Okay, and I think we should start with a positive pee control so that we know what rat urine looks like, we know how to test for it, we know how to know when it's there.
And we need to just get a whole passel of rats, a bunch of cans, and let nature take its course, huh?
Is passel the collective noun for rats?
I don't know.
Well, actually, it's a horde, swarm, rabble, or pack of rats. But before they get started,
But I don't understand. How is it possible that rat pee could kill you? Yes, it's not rat pee itself that could kill you. It's the fact that rat pee could potentially carry both leptospirosis and hantavirus that makes it potentially dangerous. I see.
according to this myth, deadly pathogens transfer from rat through rat urine to soda can, and from there to people. So first, they're starting with a positive control.
Now, normally we certify our tasty, tasty MythBusters Cola as both a life-extending elixir and rat pee free. Until today. Today, 1,000 of these puppies are going to be set up as a rat run to be used as what we like to call a control for exposure to rat pee.
Adam and Jamie will hone their rat pee tracking technique before moving on to test real-world soda cans.
So why go to all this trouble to clean the cans just to have rats pee on them? Well, it's because all we want to find is rat pee, not random dirt or other false positives that may be introduced into our test. So we scrub every single one. And I gotta say, looking at 1,000 cans, there's a lot of dirt to be cleaned up.
Now that the cans are pristine, let the rodent incontinence begin.
This little guy right here is Rattus norvegicus, otherwise known as the dwarf rat or the sewer rat, the brown rat or the common rat. They're the dominant rat species in the northern hemisphere, and they were held responsible for the Black Plague in the Middle Ages, which killed tens of millions of people. However, technically it was the fleas they carried, not the rats themselves, that caused the plague.
And now it's their urine taking the blame. But is it deadly? The rats aren't shy in helping the guys find out.
Oh, I see some rat urine on a can.
Nice! This is awesome.
This is one of those sounds that you'll only hear on MythBusters. Sound of 40 rats on 1,000 cans.
And after 90 minutes of the pitter-patter of ratty feet,
The rat party is wrapped.
Let's put them back in their cages.
there's certainly rat pee on those cans. And the first tracking technique? Blacklight.
Did you know that rat pee fluoresces under blacklight? Well, that's the next thing we're gonna do. We're gonna get some blacklights and go take a look for them. I feel like I'm one of those police procedural dramas.
And with plenty of glowing puddles,
It's gotta be urine.
Lights up like a pinball machine. Oh, this one is so gross. Look at that.
the boys are positive that the blacklight is the perfect way to pinpoint the pee.
Well, that's gross. I guess it's time to collect our real-world random samples now.
Well, we better get started. We've got 1,000 cans to collect from all over the city.
1,000. Okay, let's do it.
So what's the story?
Well, I've been thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we were action heroes in our own movie and some bad guys were trying to blow us up, but we managed to escape?
Is that a harp I'm hearing?
Shush, here comes the clip.
It's a climactic cinema cliche. Our heroes are trapped on a boat, and a bomb's about to explode. To escape certain death, they take the plunge. and after a huge kaboom, resurface completely unharmed.
So you're wondering whether diving underwater could help protect you from an injury in the case of an explosion.
Exactly.
Sounds like a blast.
The MythBusters are no strangers to shockwaves, testing if they can cushion a fall,
Wow, here comes the shockwave.
fuse metal, and even make diamonds. But what actually causes one? A shockwave is created when the rapidly expanding gases inside an explosion travel faster than the speed of sound. And it's this shock front that causes a wave of destruction. But can you avoid imminent annihilation by leaping into water? Well, to find out, the MythBusters are hunkering in the bunker for a proof of concept.
So what's this tank all about? Well, Jamie and I wanted to build an experiment that allowed us to see the propagation of a shockwave in water versus air, i.e. in a high impedance fluid as opposed to a low impedance fluid. So, with a little bit of acrylic, a little number 16 acrylic glue, some caulk, and some 1032 button-headed and countersunk screws, I put together this bifurcated tank with the plan to fill this half with water and that half with dry ice fog, or air that we can visualize. We're going to put a firecracker right up here in the center, explode it, and hopefully we'll be able to view that same shockwave in the two different media and see if there's a difference on the high-speed camera.
And for that, Jamie's turned to string theory. These will hang in the water and move if a shockwave hits. With the tanks filled and a firecracker primed, stand by for mayhem in miniature.
Everything's perfect.
Ah, I saw the water move.
Well, let's see how it looked on the high speed.
But a closer look at the high speed reveals not much, actually.
I think we need something bigger than this firecracker.
I think we do. We're going to juice things up a bit. This little firecracker only has a few grains of flash powder in it. If you happen to hold on to this, it'd give you a nasty little burn and make your fingers numb. Officer Smith, I think we need something a little bigger. Can you hook us up?
The M80.
That ought to do it. This thing has a few grams of flash powder in it. If you held on to it, your fingers are going away. It's going to give us enough of a shockwave to do the job.
With shockwaves, apparently size matters. Cue the M80.
Come on, baby. That was loud.
And interestingly, I saw the fog move, but not the water.
Well, let's check it out on high speed. I didn't see much. Did you?
I'm seeing the smoke move around. See that divot there?
Remember, they're looking for proof that a shockwave behaves differently in water to air. But the shockwaves aren't showing up on the close-up. So for a bigger boom, it's back to Officer Smith.
The M1000.
Ah, more?
About 100 times more.
Hopefully that should tie up Jamie's loose threads.
Oh, it's getting close. There it comes. Whoa! I think we're going to have seen something.
I think so. Oh, did that blow the door open? There's water on the ceiling. That's always a good sign.
Yeah.
A good sign, but once again the high-speed replay has the same problem. There's no clear shot of the shockwave.
It's reacting, but they seem to be reacting differently somehow.
Well, they're not telling us what we want to see. I think we're going to have to concoct a different test if we're going to learn whether or not there's a difference between a shockwave in the water and a shockwave in the air.
I think you're right. We're done here.
Okay. Next up is an actual prank. Let me start with a question. Have you ever gone to sleepaway camp?
I was a camp counselor for years.
Okay, did you ever play pranks on the kids in your charge?
Of course. In fact, that was a job requirement.
Ever take a sleeping person's hand and dip it in a bowl of warm water to see if they'd wet themselves?
Actually, no, but I have always wondered about that one.
You're not going to have to wonder much longer because we're going to put it to the test.
Well, all right then.
Aside from our sleeping human guinea pigs, the only piece of equipment the team requires for this test is this moisture-activated voice alarm.
So how is it that these shiny strips of metal are able to detect liquid? Well, when water crosses over two of these strips, it'll allow a minute amount of electrical current to pass through it. And this alarm right here is sensitive enough to detect that and start yelling at me.
Oh my God, what the hell are you doing?
When it does.
Next, the guys need a place to sleep.
Got my jammies, I'm ready to go to work.
And here at the California Sleep Lab, in this bedroom with a view, they've got state-of-the-art monitoring equipment.
This looks comfy. A lovely plastic sheet.
This is a camp prank, a staple of camp pranks the world over for generations, I swear. And it is simply that if you take a sleeping person's hand and place it in a bowl of warm water, that person will involuntarily wet themselves in their bed.
Oh my God, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Now, we researched the heck out of this, and we got tons of anecdotal evidence, but nobody seems to have studied it, and that's where we come in.
All right, so we're gonna start your hookup now.
Okay.
We have come to the California Center for Sleep Disorders, and Jamie and I are each going to take turns being the test subject. One of us will fall asleep in this bed, and when we reach the correct phase of sleep, the other one will sneak in with a bowl of water and see if this is in fact true.
Do I think this is going to work? Well, in my case, not so much. As it happens, I'm a very light sleeper, and my suspicion is that if somebody comes in the middle of the night and tries to mess with my hand, the other one's going to hit him square in the face.
And that is surely the key stumbling block for this myth.
Is he sucking his thumb?
Unless they are absolutely out for the count, getting the sleeper's hand into the water without waking them up will be tough. But that's where clinical director Michael Salemi comes in.
His eyes are closed, but he's definitely not asleep.
With all the electrodes on Jamie's head, what are we looking at there?
These are his eyes right here, and we're looking at eye movements, and this is his EEG. So we're looking at his brainwave patterns here to see if there's any changes that would indicate that he's actually fallen asleep.
Basically, by monitoring the brain's electrical activity, we can tell how deep is Jamie's sleep. Stages 1 and 2 are light transitional stages that won't be ideal for this test. Stage 3, also called slow wave sleep, is the goal. Here, brain activity is significantly reduced and the sleeper is less easily woken. But Jamie's playing hard to get.
He's not sleeping. He's waiting.
And Adam, geared up with night vision goggles, loses patience and goes in.
Oh, you're totally awake. You've had like 2 hours, man.
Sorry. Nice get up.
Thank you. I think your time is up. I think it's my turn.
Okay.
Well, I don't mean to be a party pooper, but no sleep, no results.
So, I was right about Jamie not sleeping. He was waiting, and he waited us out. He waited so long we had to throw him out as a test subject. I've always wanted the cyber hair extensions, and now it's my turn.
As soon as Adam's down, he's out. And finally, things are looking up. Or are they?
Although Adam dropped to sleep really quickly, he may not be a very good candidate for this either, because Adam has sleep apnea, which means that he's struggling for air from time to time and it's waking him up. So he may not be able to get down into that deep sleep that we need him to be at to do this trick.
But before the team runs out of patience, Adam finally descends into stage 3 sleep. However, there's another complication.
Both of his hands are under his head, so I don't know what to do other than try it. If he doesn't wake up, maybe we'll get what we need.
Now from high diving to deep sea diving.
Before the days of scuba diving, divers would go down in those old suits with those brass helmets, just like this, right?
Sure.
They would pressurize their suit using a compressor on a boat at the surface.
To counteract the external water pressure.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds like an accident waiting to happen.
And that's what this myth is about. If that compressor were to stop or the air hose would get cut, that diver would come to a grisly end.
Yeah, without the high pressure air helping to keep the suit inflated, it would simply crush under the weight of all the water.
That's right, and the pressure would change so suddenly, it would be so dramatic that it would literally squish the diver into the helmet.
Sick. I love it.
Yep, according to this macabre maritime myth, Early deep-sea diving suits had a flaw, whereby a failure in the air supply could cause a drastic depressurization. But could the pressure differential really put the squeeze on an entire human body? Or is this a load of pulp fiction?
So how do we test this?
Well, ultimately, I think we need to build one of these suits, put a human analog in it, drop it to the bottom of the ocean, cut the line, and see what happens.
See if we get instant sausages.
Or whatever.
Okay, before we do all that, I think we need to do two things. We need to go talk to an expert, and we need to do a few proof of concept tests.
And at San Francisco Maritime National Historical Park, ex-Navy diver Mike Ward is just the expert Carrie needs.
What do you think? Have you heard this?
Oh, yeah. It's been talked about for many years. Whether or not the whole body would go up there, I don't think so, but I think it'd be pretty dramatic.
So what kind of diving were these suits used for?
They were used for salvage diving, mariculture diving, sea harvesting, construction. They were used for virtually every kind of diving. This was the very first real type of commercial diving suit.
How deep do they go?
Down to 300 feet on average.
300 feet is quite a depth, but as Mike explains how the suit works, there's one feature that's troubling Carrie: the non-return valve.
The valve only allows air to come in one direction. In the event that the hose gets cut, the pressure differential automatically forces the valve shut. It doesn't allow anything to go up the umbilical.
You need a dive suit without a non-return valve for this myth to be possible.
I would test it as though the non-return valve wasn't working right. A lot of times divers wouldn't do the maintenance. The valve would get stuck and that would cause the failure.
So according to our dive master, the particulars of this myth are positively plausible. Which means it's time to get down to business.
As always on MythBusters, we're going to start out in the small scale. Basically, I'm going to make a tiny little diver that we can do some experiments on and find out what kind of effect suction really is going to have and let us design our big experiment.
And as Carrie's voodoo diver takes shape, it's clear who the sacrificial mini-me will be.
The diver is becoming Little Grant.
God. Look, is that Brad Pitt? That's great.
It's so beautiful. I love it. Carrie's sculpture turned out great, and it looks just like Grant. But in order to test this small scale, I need to turn this clay figure into a ballistics gel figure wearing a watertight diving suit. Now, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a plaster mold of the sculpture. Hey, look at that. It's like Han Solo, frozen in carbonite. That way I'll have two halves of a mold that I can paint in latex and cloth. So that way it'll be both watertight and it'll be durable. Once the latex is dry, I'll put the two halves together and then I'll fill the whole thing up with ballistics gel. Once the ballistic gel sets, I'll be able to open up the mold, and what I'll be left with is a mini Grant diver made out of ballistics gel in a watertight diving suit. Oh, look at that. Look, his little suit's there.
It's loose on his body. That's perfect. It'll fill right up there.
All right, now let's see if we can get him out without ripping his head off.
And thanks to Tori's ingenuity, mini diver Imahara emerges perfectly formed inside a watertight diving suit.
It's a little diving Grant.
So creepy. Look at the skull.
So this is gonna be perfect. I gotta do a little bit of repair work on the seams, but we're good to go.